Hey, we are back with another LinkedIn Live podcast with a great guest. Once again, the the purpose of this endeavor is to impact you, the audience. Right now, we have the one and only Jacob Stone. He's a hiring solution expert. That means that he goes into companies and he consults them about hiring and vice versa. He does um, career coaching also. So without further ado, let's get right into the story. But first, we are the Social Tagger. We specialize in organic growth, helping our clients excel, building buzz around their brands, and up their engagement, up their activity on their feed so that it's that much easier for our clients to close people and close mega deals here on LinkedIn. So, but let's get right into it, Jacob. So, can you please introduce yourself with a little bit of introduction and let us know what you do for your clients?
Yeah, well, you hit it right on the head. I'm a hiring solutions consultant, and so really what that means is, we do recruiting and staffing. That's one aspect of it.
Mm,
But you start saying recruiting and staffing and headhunting, and it kind of silos you into only placing people into positions. Whether it be
yeah.
on a contract basis or permanent, direct hire basis,
Mhm.
what have you.
Yeah.
And I do more than that. I really focus on the holistic hiring life cycle. So
Nice.
everything from, obviously sourcing candidates, qualifying them, doing that kind of thing, but then also working with HR departments, hiring managers, talent acquisition teams, and putting together hiring plans. Whether that be budgeting,
Nice.
timeline, refining,
Amazing.
writing job descriptions, defining what types of roles that you need and when you need them, because a lot of times
Amazing.
a lot of times I think what happens is people, they take a job description that maybe they just Google, I need a software engineer, they
Yeah.
just use that as an example,
Yeah.
and they copy and paste what they need, and that's their job description. Because
Mhm.
you go on LinkedIn on their job searches, and almost every single software engineering role, for example,
Yeah.
pretty much looks the same. I mean, the stack might be a little bit different.
That's true.
Yeah, and so hiring the right person and being able to scale your team correctly, you need to define what those roles are, and you need to have a hiring plan in place to strategically hire and grow your team
Mhm.
successfully.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. Is I come in, I help with that. I can on the client side, on the company side, I can consult with them to help put that together, use best practices, really help fine tune the way that they're thinking about scaling the team. And then again, on the candidate side is then, I help with the interview process, qualifying them. If we need to tech screen them, I can do
Mm,
that as well. And then, yeah.
amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I see like this is what really companies need because one of the major problems is obviously turnover, right? And not
Mhm.
hiring the right kind of people. And then the resources and efforts of retraining, letting the person go and then retraining, that effort can be avoided. And also, everything starts in the hiring process. Of course, nothing's 100% guaranteed, of course, but
Sure.
really streamlining the hiring process, you can make some guarantees in place to find the right candidate to but it all starts with the message that the companies are putting out there, right?
Yep.
Obviously. And so this is a major pain point of many companies out there, from the could be like a multi-million dollar company to multi-billion dollar company. So even so much more so in the big companies, because sometimes they lose sight of their overall vision, right? And so this is like great value to them. So if you want to go into like your story and a little background story and how you got into this kind of process of hiring as
Sure.
a hiring solution expert.
So I started off early on in my career. I started off in software sales. I was living out
Mm,
in LA. Excuse me. I was living out in
awesome.
LA, and I was working for a startup that got bought out, and then I went to a different company and did the same thing, software sales, and I was starting to feel like, with especially with software sales, is it's like you're just hammering phones. It's very transactional.
Yeah.
And I had a mutual contact with someone that said, "Hey, you have a really good personality. You have this go-getter mentality.
Mhm.
I can teach you how to recruit and all that. I just need someone that
Amazing.
is coachable and that can do this." So I ended up going into a bigger agency, a staffing agency,
Mm,
and I did that for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And what I
great.
found out was that with bigger agencies, they're very transactional,
Yeah.
with recruiters. And that's why I feel like recruiting and staffing has such a bad connotation to
Yeah.
it,
Hmm.
is it's too, too often than not, it's a numbers game. So you get people that are just
Yeah.
slinging resumes like, I'm just hoping it's going to stick.
Yeah.
It's like,
Exactly.
I don't like that. I feel like I'm wasting the hiring manager's time. I'm wasting my time. You're always in fear of like, am
Mhm.
I going to close the deal? Am I not going to close the deal?
Yeah.
And blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
So then I started thinking about a different approach is, instead of like, we need to find the right client, and that right client
Yeah.
is to be the one that understands that the value of the entire hiring process,
Yeah.
and build it more upon relationship and culture.
Hmm. Yeah.
So rather than be a like spaghetti recruiter where you're just throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks,
Mhm.
is I really had this passion um, to really find what the company's culture was about, what their
Yeah.
pain points were, what type of candidates they were looking for,
Yeah.
where they saw the future of their company going, where they saw the future of this candidate going. Because again, like, and you touched on it, people are leaving jobs, or it's, how do you keep people from leaving? And it
Yeah.
100% just comes down to culture.
Yeah.
It's not about, well, what are you selling or what are you doing this? That's a widget is a
Exactly.
widget, a service can be a service, but it's what's the vibe of the company? Are
Yeah.
you going to treat me with respect? I'm going to give you everything I got? Are you going to give me something in return? I mean, it's that kind of relationship.
Exactly. Mhm.
So finding that company and those companies that understood that and that wanted to scale and wanted to have, high
Mhm.
functioning, very efficient candidates and
Yeah.
employees that stayed long time to make those impacts.
Yeah.
I found out that, it's more about that relationship and about giving you quality candidates instead of
Mhm.
quantity candidates.
Yeah.
So, my
Exactly.
metric, or what I try to strive for, is if I give you 5 candidates, if I submit
Mhm.
you 5, you'll interview 3, and out of those 3,
Mm.
you'll hire 1, rather than I submit you 50 and you might interview 50, and
And then you lose all your time interviewing the 50. Yeah.
yeah. And so
Yeah.
as I started doing that and I started working with clients, I was realizing that part of that disconnect, there is this huge disconnect, by the way, with candidates and
Oh, yeah.
clients, hiring managers. And a lot of that disconnect came from, on the hiring manager side, was that they didn't know how to put together a proper job description or expectation, or even a
Mm.
hiring
Yeah.
process. They sometimes you're flying by night, like, well, I think it's going to be a 2-step process, but you know what? After this 2-step process, we actually need them to talk to like 2 or 3 more people and bring them in. And it wasn't, the
Yeah.
expectation wasn't there. So you would lose candidates because they would find something else. The process
In
was
the
taking too
meantime,
long. It was
right?
inefficient,
Hmm.
what have you. So then that's why I started doing it the way that I was doing it, was
Mm.
more based around true consultative hiring solutions rather than just staff augmentation and staffing.
Exactly. No, yeah, yeah, and I think that this needs to be talked about more because a lot of well, I don't want to say up, well, yeah, a lot of upper management um, like don't know what's going on. They have no clue what's going on. They follow the daily routine. They have no clue what's going on in the hiring department, right? And that interconnectivity. Um, I mean, if they have an HR department, obviously, and that interconnectivity and that intercommunication of like processes of how to intercommunicate into departments, it loses, right? There's lots of information lost in there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
Um,
and
yeah.
to that point, with HR, and this is another thing is I think a lot of times companies think HR is part of that hiring process, and they are kind of. But if you talk to any real HR, not necessarily a generalist, but like a real HR person, they're like, I don't like doing the talent acquisition part. That's not what I strive at. I got payroll to work, I got benefits to worry. I got SOPs to write. I got like all this other stuff, and like the hiring part of it, it's like my least favorite. And so why not hire a specialty person of like just extension of you, competing with you?
Exactly.
Like you would outsource an accountant if you don't have one, or you would outsource someone that's in maybe digital marketing if you didn't have a marketing department. So it's the same concept. So I think a lot of people conflate HR with talent acquisition. That's not always necessarily the case. I mean, it can be, but more times than not, I have found that it's not really.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to like problem awareness, I know that some companies know that they have a problem. Other companies are oblivious, and so it's like how like let's say if a person watches live and is agreeing with what you say, right? Obviously, and l- like some managers get like, what is the first step that they need to do in order to become aware of these hiring issues? And they're seeing all the bad results, right? But
Right.
they don't know how to pinpoint it, or because each problem leaves breadcrumbs, right? And
Mhm.
it's usually the hiring process to begin with. Right? It leads back. So how can they effectively manage like and pinpoint it? Okay, it's a hiring process. How can they like backtrack that to the?
So the biggest, and you hear this from everyone. I mean, anyone that's either interviewing for jobs or doing the interviewing, like the interviewer on both sides, is if you go on LinkedIn even or Indeed or anything like that, there are so many jobs and no one gets a call back. And on the hiring side, they're going, I'm getting all these candidates, I'm getting all these resumes, and I don't like any of them. Okay, well, if you're getting 100 resumes for a job that you posted and you don't like any of them, or you've interviewed a couple of them and it's like not even close to being what you're looking for, then that's a red flag of there's either you, the hiring team, the company's expectations, or your job description isn't right. And furthermore, if you are, let's say, like I'm actually getting good candidates, but I can't close them. I can't get them to, I offer them, but no one's accepting. Why is that? They're going somewhere else.
Okay.
Well, then that's another thing is, well, what is it? Is it my culture? Um, is it maybe that the process is taking too long and someone else, because some of these people, if your hiring process from start to finish is more than 2.5 weeks, you're already behind. Most people are looking for a role. Like I'm ready to get started. I'm ready to go now.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that could be a red flag as well. So if you're starting to see those kinds of things, and that's a telltale sign of like, wait a minute, we need to do some retrospection here and figure out, is it our jobs? Is it the description that we're having? Why are these roles or sometimes these roles have been open for 6-7 months and I can't fill it?
Exactly.
Is that who's doing the interviewing? What are the interview questions? How are you interviewing? How are you gauging? That's another big thing.
Yeah, exactly. I feel a lot of like interviewers are given like the wrong vibe as well. I mean, let's face it. No, I'm not going to generalize it. I'm going to say interviewers sometimes should not be the ones interviewing. interviewing because of their attitude or their demeanor or whatever, right? So how much like choosing the right kind of person to interview, does that have like a big impact as well? Or
Yeah, I mean, it does. It can. And again, that's where putting together a hiring plan and what stages of who's going to talk to who
Yeah.
and what are you going to talk about in that interview.
exactly.
Um, and yes, there are some of those people, and we all know them, that are not the most favorite of the company, and for whatever reason, they're like the first. They're the ones that they lead out with on the on the interview. And if that's the person, then that's goes to culture. I mean, if that's your thing,
Yeah.
that's your thing. But that there's not really much you're going to be able to do about that with that,
Yeah.
unless. But again, I think more to the point, having that plan in place. And what I mean by plan is you have, let's say, it's a 3-step process, and on the first step is going to be a phone call, and it's going to be, I want you to tell me about your background. I want,
Yeah.
where are you from? It's kind of just like, well, let's get to know each other.
Yeah.
That second round
Exactly.
maybe is going to be, okay, you're going to talk to the VP, and what he's going to really want to do is go into depth of and ask questions, probing questions of what were the results of your work and your past experiences.
Mhm.
So he's going to center questions and stuff around that. Or if it's a engineer or something like that, then that might be a technical assessment. They're going to tech you out. I want to see how you do this, that, and the other. And on that final one, a lot of times I always say it's always good to bring them in to a team interview. So the people who they're working with,
Yeah.
and that's just like, let's just shoot the bull, man. Let's just like, do we vibe? Are you a cool guy? Are you awkward? Are you not awkward? Is it, do we vibe? Because that's going to be ultimately what's going to keep people going. We fit in with the team, So I think having those processes in place with a strategy of what you're actually going to go over when you have that interview during those sessions, is paramount.
Yeah. Exactly. So, I know that we talked a little bit about the mistakes that companies are making, right? Especially on the hiring side, and I want to get into like the value part as well in actually what should people be looking for, like what are the qualities, what kind of things they should be looking for in a good company to choose the right company. But you said that it all goes back to the vision and culture, right? Culture is number one. So, what are the number one mistakes that companies, big or small, are making in their communication that is not really communicating their culture, and that's why candidates are looking elsewhere.
Well, so I think the biggest reason for people leaving, it's if do they like the people they work with? That if you hate going in every day or hate the people you're working with every day, like that's an easy thing. But I think more what people overlook is there a track for improvement? Most people, and this is a made up statistic by me, but I would say about 90% of people, when they're working, they want to be either not necessarily promoted, but they want more challenging things to do. They don't want to like have the same work every single day, time in and time out for the next however many years. So being able to convey as far as like that culture is concerned, what are some rooms for growth? Do you do professional, continuous learning? Do you offer that kind of stuff? Will you help sponsor any kind of certifications? Let's say I get in, let's say I'm just I'm a sales guy, for example. And you know what? I do a sales, but I really want to get into like, instead of outbound lead gen, I really want to get into customer success, or I want to get into sales engineering and stuff like that. Is there a path for me to do that? And I think when hiring managers and companies start conveying, well, what this is the type of culture we have, is yes. If we're hiring you for this, but let's say a year down the road, you're like, there's an opening and I think I could be really beneficial here and I would love to learn that. And let's talk about it. That is absolutely on the table. People want that. People would not, I don't see why you would leave a job, with a company you already have tenure in, to go do the same thing somewhere else. So understanding that part of it, that people want to grow, that continuous growth. They want new responsibilities for the most part. And then obviously having we work because we need money, having a path to increase compensation. A lot of times in the interview process that comes up and it's like shoved off to the side. Well, I don't know. Let's just get over the hump first and we can figure that out. Well, I want to plan out what I'm going to do in the next 2 or 3 years. I mean, yeah, I can stay here until I find my next big thing. Or is there a path for me to actually get promoted? Is there pay increases? Is there a bonus structure? So having that in place too will really help figure that out.
Exactly. So, what do you see? Like, I know there's a lot of idiosyncrasies in like the hiring process, and there's lots of things that could be failing, right? Um, so, when you are in that when let's say when you're working with a client and when you're in that diagnosing phase of like what things they're doing wrong to improve on, what does that process look like, and what is the in your experience, what is the number one thing that they're not doing or maybe they're not doing enough of?
So it depends on, obviously, it depends on the industry and the
Yeah.
company. Um, One of the things I think would be what the very first thing I would look at is what is your hiring process? What does
Mhm,
that look like?
mhm,
Like who's doing the interviewing? Who's, what's the first step? All that kind of stuff. Like
yeah,
what types of questions are you asking? Um, the moment that they start saying, well, we just do a generalized thing, and then we ask like, what's your
mhm,
weaks and your strengths, strengths and weaknesses? Worst question ever, red flag. Let me help you, because that doesn't really tell you much of any kind of anything. What you want to look at, and what I try to pinpoint or try to really silo in on, is that strategic process. So when I'm diagnosing, okay, this is not going well. You have all these jobs open, you can't fill them. Let's look at what does your process look like? Who are they talking to first? And what are you guys talking about?
mhm,
And then from there, what does your job description look like?
yeah,
Because again, it depends on the role. But like let's just take a software engineer, for example.
mhm,
Those are going to be pretty basic of this is the tech stack that we have, this is what we're doing, blah, 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 blah. Well, there's a lot of other intangibles on there that you might want to put, because put on that job description because people will tailor their resume to that. The good ones will. So you want to put that on there. And what I mean by intangibles, things like how collaborative are you? How creative are you? Are you coachable? And so candidates, if they're smart and they're good, they can put that on their resume, put instances of how they created something or how they collaborated cross functionally with X, Y, and Z team to implement this product that resulted in this type of revenue. And then so again, trying to pinpoint what it is exactly of like where do you start the process. It really depends on the company. It depends on the size of the company and what they're doing. But a lot of times it comes into what is your step-by-step process? What does that look like?
yeah, yeah. I'm like really breaking it down in a simple way and step by step. I think it's really beneficial
Mm-hmm.
for like um, um, people to see that, right? So, could you give like a outline? I know this depends on the industry. It depends on so many variables. But of course, don't divulge any of the secret sauce. That makes you
Yeah.
great, obviously, right? But could you like outline like a step-by-step process of what companies should be doing when involved in the hiring process?
So the step-by-step process, the very first thing that needs to happen, and it depends on obviously the size of the company and all that, but
Mm, yeah.
you need to carve out some time with whoever the hiring team is, like so whatever the managers who's actually going to be managing these people who need these roles filled,
Mhm.
along with whoever's doing your talent acquisition, whether that be an outsourced recruiting firm, whether that be your internal talent act team, whether that be HR, whoever that is. And you need to set aside I say a bunch of time, a couple hours, and really define what it is that we're looking for budget wise. What are these jobs? What are their roles? What does the first 6 months of this job look like? What is the first year, 2 years, and 3 years? What is that all going to look like? As you may know, and as a bunch of people probably know, is if you make a bad hire, especially if you're a smaller company or a startup, that can make or break you very quickly because you lose a lot of time and resources and all that. So during the hiring process, building that strategy and getting, I say, pretty granular on what the expectations are, what the process is going to be, budgeting, defining which roles we actually need and when, and the importance of which roles need to be filled first, will save you so much time, money, resources, headaches, agita, heartburn, all that down the road if you do it up front, do it correctly. And I think that's why with boutique firms, boutique recruiting firms, is that they tend to have a more personalized approach. You don't have a bunch of these account managers or recruiters competing for the business. So I just need to get butts and seats. Boutique ones tend to, let me understand what your need is. Let me understand what your pain point is. How are you doing this? How is your process for that? So I think starting off, trying to, I guess, when you're starting off, like what is this? I say secret sauce of that is, it's really just being transparent with each other, with your team, and understanding what is this process, what does it look like, what is the end goal, and how much are we willing to spend, and how much time are we willing to put into it.
Exactly. So a little bit about on that, it's like a lot of people, a lot of companies have like budgets, a lot of people find it difficult, and they sometimes put the hiring process on the back burner.
They do.
I would say, and when it should be like the hiring process should be actually one of the most important things, right?
Yeah.
So what do you say to those kind of companies that have left their hiring process on the back burner and don't really pay much attention to it? It's kind of like fly by the seat of your pants kind of process, and what kind of repercussions could they have?
So it's funny enough, I actually did a LinkedIn post not too long ago about this very topic of, when do you hire? Like when? And the best analogy I came up with was, you're not going to want to like draft your best players. Like let's take the NFL, for example, or whatever. You're not going to want to draft your best players at halftime in the championship game, right? It doesn't do you much good. So knowing when to hire, and everyone does put it on the back burner because it's like, I don't want to spend the money, I don't want to spend the time. No one likes hiring, no one likes to be interviewed, no one likes interviewing. It's one of those things where it's a necessary process, but on both candidate side and on the hiring manager side, no one likes being in that process. So it, like you said, it does tend to get pushed off in the back. So when do you figure it? It's like when you start seeing your employees, for example, start getting burned out. Are you overbearing them too much with too much work? Is Becky in HR? She's also doing HR, payroll. She's doing talent act. She's doing benefits stuff. She's doing this. Okay, but she's only one person for a 100-person company. She's doing all this stuff. Okay, well, it's probably right that we need to hire 2 or 3 more so we can take stuff off Becky's plate, because she's getting burned out. She's going to either end up leaving or her work is slipping. So when you start noticing that, or if your sales funnel, your pipeline is getting too full, and people are putting in way too many hours. I know that's a very taboo thing to say, but that does matter. In this day and age, work-life balance beats almost compensation and titles over everything. Especially with millennials, they'll take PTO and work-life balance over $10K. Big bonus money. So understanding that part of it as well. But yeah, I think so. Knowing when to do it, it would be whenever you start feeling those pressures, when you're starting to really want to scale, and the later you put it off. And it doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, I think we should do it right now. But like, let's start. You should always start talking about, you know what? I think we're getting to that point where we need to scale. So let's start implementing a strategy. How's that going to look? What roles do we actually need filled? Which are the most important ones? When can we do it? What's our budget for this? What does that look like? You can start that process when you start feeling those strains. When you start seeing your employees getting burned out. When you start feeling your sales pipeline and all that kind of stuff. Maybe grow to a point where you can't handle it yourself if you're an independent entrepreneur.
Yeah, exactly. So, I know, like you said before, like it really depends on the, and I want to get into this a little better. It really depends on the size. It depends on the vision. Depends on the industry. So, what kind of a like, depending on the size, what kind of variables are there in the hiring process, and why is it kind of like dangerous to like have like a cookie cutter hiring process? Because let's say that a lot of people, no matter what kind of company, no matter what kind of size of the company, I could have 1,000 employees, 2,000 can have 0 employees. They sort of have like this cookie cutter and just like hope for the best, right?
Mhm.
What are the dangers of like that kind of process to begin with?
So each company, each organization, regardless of size, is its own, and I like to think of it as its own like living organism. It's its own, ecosystem, its own being, entity, if you will. It has its own personality. And so doing the cookie cutter approach, and I'm assuming you mean by like just doing copy and paste certain job descriptions
Yeah,
and doing that.
exactly.
Yeah. The What might work for, let's just say you're a company of 20 people, okay, and you're selling a service of some kind. That's going to look a lot different than if you know the 10,000 employee person that's selling a service. And the reason being is that the hire that you make at that 20 person firm is going to be much more impactful for the most part than someone that's going to be another cog in that 10,000.
Yeah.
You're going to feel a lot more if you make the wrong hire on a smaller team than you will on a big, Fortune 500 company. So a lot of these, templates that you see, as far as job descriptions or how to interview and stuff like that, a lot of those come from bigger companies, the Googles, um, you know, even some of the financial service companies. They're not really geared for that 10 to 20 person thing that might just be looking to hire one or two either admins or salespeople or what have you. Because again, let's say you make a really bad hire at that 20 person company. Well, that's going to burn you tens of thousands of dollars just in cash flow, plus the time it's going to take to onboard and offboard and all that other stuff. Whereas you have the 10,000 person company, you probably won't even miss it. So that's why you want to take a more tailored approach in really defining what your culture is, conveying that on your job description, being very precise in what your expectations are as far as skill set and requirements. And here's a big thing too. Don't treat a resume or a job description like a checkbox. No one's going to have 100% of the things that you want. It's just not feasible. I mean, you might one out of like a million. So what you want to look for, and this is where the tailored approach comes in, is you need these skills. These are mandatory, right? But I can teach you our product. I can teach you our systems. I can teach you these or train you on these other things. So do they have that potential? That's what you want to be looking for. And when you take a cookie cutter approach of the hiring process, you miss out on a lot of that. You miss out on a lot of really good candidates because, they only had 9 out of 10 of the things that we really wanted and pass. And it's like you just missed out on a really good guy that was affordable because, you were taking the advice of someone that, probably wrote this thing that put it in Chat GPT and then copy and pasted it.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, it really makes sense because I mean, it all depends on the process. Just as you said, and I'll reiterate this point, is that it's super important to choose the right kind of person because if you do not, and if you get burned and you're like a smaller company, then that's going to make an impact on your bottom line profits, obviously, right? And then a lot of companies do not relate revenue with choosing the right kind of people, right?
They don't.
I wish they would. So I mean, like, where do you think that disconnect happens? I mean, like, well, to me, because I I used to be involved in HR as a hiring manager, also, but only for a couple of years, and so it's like this. I don't know if it's indifference or not considering how to prevent problems, or a lot of people like again disconnect the potential for earning money or missing out on revenue with not like hiring the right kind of people. Where do you think that disconnect happens along the way?
So I think the disconnect, it comes from, they don't view hiring as an opportunity cost, and they view it more as something that's eating away at them. They don't see it as like, because it's going to cost me money. I got to pay this salary. I got to pay the insurance. If I'm using a
True.
recruiter, I got to pay that.
Yeah.
So they see it as, well, I'm spending rather than gaining, and they don't see that the opportunity cost in that is actually, it'll take plate off of, let's just, and I'll use a lawyer as an example, just because this is an easy analogy. Lawyers bill by their time. Their time is literally money. So rather than you taking the time to do, all the work that a paralegal, for example, could do, um, you, it's an investment up front to pay for this paralegal and all that, but it'll get you back to billing 10 hours more a week, and if you're billing, $700, $500 to $700 an hour, well, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
You'll make that back in really after your first couple of months. So they don't see it. They don't really think about it that way. And I think that's part of what I try to do when I consult on the hiring solutions part, is change that mindset. To your point is, how do you view this as a revenue, from a revenue standpoint, as a business increase, not a business expense?
Exactly.
So
Yeah, exactly. And it really requires maybe, well, of course not maybe, an adjustment in the attitude, right? Like, um, when it comes to like the decision makers of, uh, I've had many conversations with many people, not only my not only in the companies that I've been a part of, bigger and smaller. So who makes the ultimate decision when it comes to hiring? Is it upper management? Is it the CEO? Is it the a dedicated hiring department? Or, is it the HR team, or like, because it seems like many people are like dipping their hand in the cookie jar of hiring. They want
yeah,
like all their 2 cents on no or yes. Like it involved like like hiring one person can open up a can of worms, right? So, any tips on how to handle that? I mean,
yeah. So, and that again, I keep going back to it. That's why a hiring plan is so essential, because that way who is. And I mean, and again, it depends on the company. It depends
yeah,
on the size of them. But there is no, and I've had clients that they got to talk to like 10 different managers.
Holy,
This is
insane.
um, yeah. So generally, the way I view it is, obviously whoever the CEO or whoever that C-level executive is that's approving the budget, the hiring manager at some point had to go to, Mr. Executive and say, hey, we're hurting. We need to hire another one of these people, and give his reason. And the executive said, I agree. Go ahead. At that point, what I always try to tell people is that hiring manager, the one that person is going to be working closely with, he should be the decision maker, full stop. It shouldn't be HR. It shouldn't be the CEO. It shouldn't be any of that. If, depending on the size, and if they have a board, then sometimes the executive, just by their bylaws, they need to get approval. Okay, fine. But for the most part, if the hiring manager signs off on them, then that should be a go. And if the team signs off on them, it should be a collaborative of, I don't want to make it sound like a dictatorship here, where it's just whether the manager says yay or nay. The team should very much be hands-on. They should be a step in that process.
Exactly.
So trying to figure out who needs to talk to who, I'm always a big one for, for that first round. I generally like to say, okay, you'll talk to maybe an HR person, and that's more of just, if you need to, just so they can, on the candidate's behalf, that they can ask questions about the company as far as benefits, comp, what does all that look like? And then that way, whenever you get to the actual hiring manager, you can get into the nitty gritty. You can get into what's your skill set? Tell me about your background, blah, 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 blah. If you're working with an outside agency, I'm always big on, like, if we need to include HR, great, but you've already hired me to do that pre-screening. So it's kind of redundant for me to take this person of whom I've already qualified and interviewed to then send it to an HR generalist, who then is going to say the same thing that I said and then just hand it over to it. It's a waste of
Exactly.
And so I always say, like, let's trim that out. And if you have faith in me, if I'm doing my job, then you're not going to need that. And she doesn't want to do that. That's not why she's here. She doesn't want to. That's why you're outsourcing it to me, because she doesn't want to do it.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah. So all of this sounds like super awesome, obviously. So in terms of, like, the results, I know you do super customized. I know it can get inner complex. It can be very complex in some of these companies. Obviously, you go in there and simplify the process, you eliminate redundancy and stuff like that. So what are, like, the typical results that a company can see with these kind of services, with these kind of streamlining hiring process, and have a step-by-step customizable to their needs?
Sure. So the biggest thing, the number one result, the number one thing is your peace of mind is going to go away. You're going to have that peace of mind. You're not going to have that, oh God, I got to interview this person. Oh my God, we're so far behind. This job has been open forever. I got to sift through these, like, 50 emails of resumes that came in. That all goes away. When you actually implement that hiring strategy with budgeting and everything like that, the expectations are already in front of you. Now, you can deviate from that as circumstances, but this is a good outline, a good structure. And that helps you plan out your weeks, your day, your timeline. And I think for the most part, it keeps your frustration down, because your expectations will become much more realistic. I think right now, like I said, there's this big disconnect between candidate and hiring manager, in that hiring managers everyone wants, like, the purple unicorn. They all want this, person that does it all for not that expensive and is blah, 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 blah. And that just doesn't,
Not realistic.
Not realistic. So really getting down to, what are our must-haves, what are our nice-to-haves, and what are our, like, intangibles? Is this person, can we teach this? Is this skill? Is this really we need to put on there? Or can we train them on that? We can train them on that. Okay, great. That opens up the candidate pool, because now, as it goes into your applicant tracking system, especially with all the AI, a lot of those AI things are sifting through resumes and Xing them because they don't have a certain buzzword on them. And so you're missing out on that. So I think creating a strategic plan and getting granular this way in your hiring process and treating it as an actual business strategy, it'll help with that peace of mind. It'll help you hire more effectively and efficiently. It'll actually even help you hire quicker, and it'll keep employee retention.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So, and of course, all this affects the bottom line. Uh, I mean, they may not see like results a day later, obviously, but which some companies actually do expect that, and it's totally unreasonable.
Yep.
But other companies are open to maybe 6 months or even a year down the line to see all these kind of benefits online. It's really a long-term strategy. Building up your long-term strategy, your hiring process will benefit companies in the long run, and everyone will be happy. Everyone will be contributing to that culture, as you see, as you said, it was so important, right? So I just want to take a couple minutes in talking about the other side of the coin as candidates looking for like the right kind of company, right? Uh,
Mhm.
and and I know maybe candidates looking from a candidate point of view, well, depending on their experience, they can see whether it's step by step process or maybe a fly by the seat kind of moment, and that's why
Yeah.
that's why they leave, obviously, right? But like, let's say if I'm a candidate and I'm looking for a job, what are the tall like the signs of choosing a great company that does have a step by step process? What kind of things can you expect in the
Sure.
description, and what kind of things should a candidate be looking for?
So it's a little different on the candidate side because, I think more time, and anyone that's applying for jobs can tell you this. They'll apply to 100 jobs and they might only hear back from two.
Yeah.
And you'll have a conversation with a recruiter or someone in HR. You think it went really well, and then you never hear from them ever
Hmm.
again. This whole ghosting
Yeah.
thing. So it's a little different how to pick out your companies and things like that, as far as the culture and all that is concerned. Um, what I always tell people on the candidate side, when you're looking for a job, it needs to become a job to find a job. And what I mean by that is you need to network. You need to get on LinkedIn. You need to post. You need to set up, virtual coffees, have one-on-one meetings, and say, like, you might not be a hiring manager, but this is what I'm looking for. These are my skill sets. Who do you know, and who can you introduce me
Yeah.
to? That's how you're going to find most of your jobs. It's a lot of work. It's tedious. It makes you get out of your comfort zone 100%. But what you'll find out happening is you'll start having better conversations. You'll also tend to get more eyes on your resume from if someone who knows the hiring manager puts it in front of them, rather than just putting it into easy apply LinkedIn into that
Oh
black hole
yeah.
of nothingness.
Oh yeah.
Um, so so there's that part of it. So I always tell people that are looking for jobs when I'm coaching them up is you want to network. You want to start talking. Go on LinkedIn and connect with recruiters. Go on there and say, and look for boutique recruiters, like people that own either their own firm or that have 10 recruiters or less, and connect with those people. They might not have a job for you right then and there, but have that conversation and see if they know, people have other recruiters in their network that they can maybe, hey, you might want to look at this guy. I don't know if you have something for him. So that now, when you get into the interview, the candidate gets an interview. How can you gauge if this is a good culture, a good
Yeah.
fit? Uh, and again, it goes back into uh, who's doing the interviewing. So if it's you know that one manager that everyone despises, he makes everyone's life miserable, but you stuck him out there for the first go, that's going to be a hard sell. Um, but if you have that streamlined, and that process that's being taken care of, as far as who's talking to what questions are being asked, and it's more organized, people are going to have more comfort in talking, assessing what you're about, how you guys operate. The conversation will flow a little bit better. Did he leave me? Am I on this thing all by myself now? Man, Jordan just straight up bounced out of here, huh? I don't know if this thing is still recorded, but I'll keep talking. If bottom line is, if you guys are looking for a job and you know, it's been a month, couple months, whatever, and you haven't quite figured
Okay,
out. I don't know if you went
I'm
away.
back.
I just
Yeah,
kept
man.
going.
Good, awesome.
I was
You were
like, all right, I guess he
you're
dipped.
like
I'm
in
like,
the zone. That's good, man.
I was no, I saw you leave, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna talk to the
Yeah,
candidates. I was actually
technical
let me
difficulty.
finish up this talk because I was dropping the nugget of
Awesome, man.
gold there.
Technical difficulty. Yeah, go ahead,
If
man.
you guys are looking, yeah, if you're looking for a job, the best thing you can do is to reach out to anybody and everybody. And I mean, have a conversation with people that are like-minded, maybe that were even your peers. Like, let's say that you were just a QA engineer. Reach out to another QA engineer and just say, I'm looking for a job. I also want to connect with you just to see what you're doing. If you know anybody, like, make that relationship, because that's how you're going to get that job. It's not going to be through Easy Apply. It's not going to be through Indeed or Dice. It's just not going to be a thing. It's going to be who you know. And so you have to network. You have to get out of your comfort zone and do it that way.
Wow, awesome. Well, Jacob, I mean, like you really opened our eyes in this regard, and yeah, I really think that it should be talked about more. I think, um, I mean, there are some companies out there doing the correct things, but it's just like a matter of fine tuning their methodology. No matter what in the hiring process, there's always a better thing to do. You know, there's always a streamlined process to get better. And so by all means, if anyone is looking for a hiring solution expert, you reached the mega man here, the man of the hour, Jacob. Please reach out to him on LinkedIn. Where can people find you? So just on LinkedIn, and
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best.
So,
yeah.
so anyone who has, who is watching this live right now, we have 15 watching right now, and anyone who wants to get in touch with Jacob, DM the word hiring to him, and then he will see. It is typically like they get in a call, and so what's the process of a person, like, let's say a company wants to hire your service, what does that look like on your end? Like, do you take them through a discovery, and how do they get set up doing that?
So like that first initial call will be a discovery call, like this, and I'll tell you about me. This is my story. This is our service. And then what is it that you're looking for? You know, well, we need X, Y, and Z. We're really having trouble with this, that, and the other thing. And then we kind of just talk it through and see if it's a fit. If it's a fit, yeah, this sounds great. Then we go ahead with the engagement. And the way that the engagement works is you depending on what it is, you pay a fee based on the salary of the candidate's first year, salary. So, or if it's an hourly, then that. But it's pretty straightforward, pretty standardized.
Yeah, I mean that seems really reasonable. Also, like, and so, again, like streamlining the process of hiring is like very like customizable. So, any final words for like finding the right kind of talent?
Yep. The biggest thing too is transparency. Be transparent. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with the candidate. If you're a candidate, same thing. I know a lot of times on the candidate side, it can seem desperate because I've been unemployed for a while. You just got let go. You got other obligations, what have you. But try to be as transparent as far as what your expectations are, just as well as the hiring manager, what their expectations are, and line that out. This is what we're looking for the first 6 months, for the first year, for the first 2 years to be successful. and line that out of what the expectation looks like.
Yeah. Awesome, Jacob. Well, thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us today with another amazing session here. Again, I mean, just the free, just the free value from this session, I think would help a lot of companies like put their ducks in a row, right? And it's obvious that Jacob has been around this industry for many, many, many years. He knows his stuff like the back of his hand. Just like with any skill, right? It takes time, it takes effort, it takes attitude, the right kind of attitude with to learn, and it'll take time for you to implement. So why not just hire Jacob here, and he'll put all the ducks in a row, and so yeah, I mean and then you'll have more results and less time effort spent, because as he said, like a lot of people don't want the hassle and, oh, I gotta do another interview, I gotta do another this, I gotta do another that, right? But Jacob actually enjoys it. So he's raring to go, and he's really gung ho about this stuff. It's his passion. It really instigates in me that your eyes light up when you're speaking about it, and you're like really, really in tune with your clients' needs. And so anyone, once again, who, if you're watching this replay, please reach out to Jacob. If not, just reach out for a networking chat. He doesn't bite, I promise. Well, maybe just a little bit on weekends. I'm not sure yet, but yeah, he's always here to support your hiring, talent solution management. So, thank you very much, Jacob, for joining us today. Again, we are having another amazing guest. I believe next week. She is the copywriter for Ryan Pineda, which is a multi-million dollar coach. She's met people like Jeremy Miner, and she met people. She's worked for Grant Cardone as well. So absolutely amazing guests. We're going to talk about copywriting next week. So it's going to be awesome, amazing. Again, the goal of these LinkedIn Lives is to give value, to give you motivation to keep up going on LinkedIn and keep on, like in Jacob's urging, if you want to find a job, reach out, network with people, network with the right people, get your message out there, and that's the way you're going to get the results that you want. Same thing in your business. Reach out to people on LinkedIn and network with the right kind of people, and make these meaningful connections. And lo and behold, hey, they're working with you as a client, or maybe they're pointing clients your way. Whatever the case is, it's always going to be a win-win collaboration if we have the right attitude. So thank you very much, Jacob, for
I appreciate
joining
it.
us today. And again, reach out to Jacob. He's a great guy, and he'll put all your ducks in a row. Bye-bye, guys.
Yep.
And
Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm down to talk to anybody.
awesome.
So
Thanks a lot, and we will see you soon.